The message came in at 9:42 p.m. No greeting, no explanation, just a sentence, clean and surgical, glowing on my screen like it had been drafted by someone who didn't want to hear my voice. "We need distance from you. Please stop contacting us completely." I read it once, then again. Then I stood there in the middle of my apartment, phone in my hand, the hum of the refrigerator suddenly louder than it had ever been, like the room itself was holding its breath to see what I would do next. I didn't sit down, I didn't cry, I didn't even feel shocked. What I felt was something colder and sharper, recognition. My name is Elena Cross, and for most of my life, I've been the person people quietly slide responsibilities toward, like paperwork across a desk. No ceremony, no acknowledgement, just an unspoken understanding that I would handle it. I work in accounts reconciliation for a regional logistics company. Numbers, timelines, balance sheets. My job is built on precision and order, on making sure nothing slips through unnoticed. That's not an accident. Order has always been my way of surviving chaos. My apartment reflects that. Neutral walls, soft lighting, everything in its place, files organized by year, receipts sorted by category in a drawer that sticks when the air gets humid. Nothing extravagant, just stable. Stability in my family has always meant one thing. I pay. My mother, Carolyn, likes to say family helps family. She usually says it while standing near the sink, towel in hand, sighing instead of finishing her sentences. My father, Dennis, prefers something firmer. Lectures about loyalty, about how blood isn't something you invoice. If his voice tightens, it means I'm expected to cover whatever bill is hovering in the background. And then there's my sister, Paige. Paige is 3 years younger and infinitely louder. She has always known how to occupy space in a room, how to pull attention toward herself without asking for it. New coats, new hairstyles, new emergencies. She calls me the vault. Half joke, half truth. Fully convenient when she needs help with a deposit, a payment, a temporary loan. Every time I tried to say no, the family chorus came in perfectly on cue. "Don't be dramatic. You know she can't do it alone. You're the responsible one." Even extended family played along. Group chats stayed light and chatty until money came up. Then the tone sharpened. Suddenly everyone remembered how much my parents had sacrificed, how much Paige deserved a break, how I shouldn't make things awkward. No one ever asked what it cost me. For years, I told myself this was normal. Every family has roles. Mine just happened to make me the financial backstop, the quiet solution. But every month when I opened my banking app, something inside me tightened. Watching my own plans shrink so theirs could expand didn't feel noble. It felt like erosion. The only person who never asked me for anything was my Uncle Martin. He runs a small appliance repair business across town. Grease under his nails, quiet eyes, the kind of man who observes more than he speaks. He never hinted, never borrowed. He just watched. I didn't understand how important that would become until later. The days before the message felt strange, in ways I didn't have language for yet. Small moments that should have rolled off me but didn't. Little cuts that settled under my skin. It started, as it often did, with Paige. She showed up at my parents' place wearing a brand new jacket, tags still creased in the fabric, and immediately started talking about a safer apartment she'd found across town. She didn't look at me when she said it. She didn't have to. "You'll cover the deposit, right?" she asked casually, scrolling her phone like she was ordering coffee. I said no, not loudly, not angrily, just a steady no. I had practiced in the bathroom mirror. My mother froze with a dish in her hand. My father inhaled slowly, the way he does when he's disappointed and already planning a lecture. The room changed. Paige smiled like I was in on a joke she understood better than I did. "Come on," she said. "It's not that deep." I left early that night, sat in my car with the heater ticking, and wondered why setting one boundary felt like committing a crime. 2 days later, my office phone rang. I answered with my work voice, calm, clipped, professional, and heard my parents' landlord cheerfully thanking me for reversing a late fee on their account. A late fee I didn't know existed. He kept talking. Mentioned how my parents had given him my work email, my schedule, so he could reach me at a good time. I stared at the blank wall across from my desk. the cheap framed print blurring as heat crawled up my neck. They hadn't just used my money, they'd stepped into my professional life without asking. That evening, I drove straight to their apartment, sat them down on the sagging couch I'd paid for, and said the words I'd swallowed for years. I deserve to know what I'm paying for. My mother's face hardened. We feel attacked. My father crossed his arms. Take that tone with your coworkers, not with us. Paige laughed from the hallway. Should we tip you now or later? It wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was casual cruelty, delivered with the ease of muscle memory. I left without finishing my sentence. The next afternoon, the group chat notification appeared. The message that erased me. We need distance from you. Please stop contacting us completely. I stared at it until my screen dimmed. Something inside me didn't break. It locked into place. They didn't ask for space. They declared exile. And in that silence, something strange happened. I felt clear. An hour later, my phone rang. Uncle Martin, I'm at your parents' place, he said carefully. They asked me to help. Pack. Pack what? I asked. Everything. Of course they were moving. Cutting contact wasn't enough. They were uprooting themselves, disappearing without a trace. I'll make sure anything with your name on it gets returned, Martin added. Don't worry. After the call, I opened the drawer of receipts I'd kept for years. Housing, utilities, medical, transportation, subscriptions, groceries. I spread them across the floor in color-coded stacks and sat there, knees pulled in, finally letting myself see it. This wasn't love. It was dependence disguised as duty. And I had been the infrastructure holding up a house that never had room for me. The realization didn't destroy me. It freed me. That night, my partner Elliot came over. He didn't knock loudly, just tapped once and stepped in, reading my face instantly. They texted you, he said. I slid the phone across the floor to him. You don't deserve this, he said quietly. I'm done, I replied. He nodded. Then let's start with the truth. I handed him the first stack of receipts. By morning, I knew exactly what my silence was going to say back. His silence after their message lasted exactly 58 minutes. I know because I checked the timestamp later, not out of obsession, but out of habit. Numbers calm me. They don't lie. They don't soften themselves to spare feelings. They simply exist, exact and undeniable. At 10:40 p.m., my phone buzzed again, not from the group chat, from Paige. Are you serious right now? I stared at the screen, the words hovering there like bait. If I responded, the argument would begin. If I didn't, the narrative would shift anyway. I placed the phone face down on the coffee table and went to the kitchen instead, poured myself a glass of water and drank it slowly. They asked for distance, so I gave it to them. By midnight, the group chat came back to life like a disturbed nest, notifications stacked on top of one another, vibrating the table in small, angry bursts. Paige again. My mother. Then my father. You're being dramatic. We meant space from your attitude, not from you. This is not how family behaves. I flipped the phone over and scrolled back to the original message, reading it again, line by line. Please stop contacting us completely. No ambiguity, no footnotes. I typed nothing. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. The apartment felt different, like the air had shifted while I slept. Lighter, but unfamiliar, the way a room feels. After you remove heavy furniture you didn't realize was weighing the floor down. I made coffee, sat at the table, opened my laptop. This time, I didn't open my email or my bank app. I opened the drawer, the one with the receipts. For years, I'd told myself I kept them because I liked order, because organization helped me think. That was only half the truth. The other half was something I hadn't been ready to admit. I kept them because I never felt safe without proof. I laid everything out on the floor, just like the night before, but this time I didn't rush. Green for housing, yellow for utilities, blue for transportation, red for medical, purple for the expenses no one ever remembered I covered. 7 years of quiet payments, 7 years of being the invisible system that made their lives function. I took photos, clear ones, one stack at a time. Then I opened a spreadsheet and began doing what I do best. I calculated. Totals by category, totals by year, dates, account numbers, Services, patterns. It wasn't emotional work. It was surgical. By the time I finished, the story was obvious, not just to me, but to anyone who looked at the numbers without sentiment clouding the view. At 11:12 a.m., I opened the family group chat. My hands didn't shake. My message appeared as a single block of text, calm and precise. I'm honoring your request for distance. Attached is a summary of the payments I've been making on your behalf. All listed payments will end on the dates circled. Please transfer the associated leases and accounts into your own names within 30 days. I attached the photos, one by one. Then, after a pause, I added one final line. I will be canceling my direct deposits first. Send. The response was immediate. My mother. Elena, what is this supposed to mean? My father. Money is not the same thing as family. Don't weaponize it. Paige. You are sick. You did this to humiliate us. Then extended family poured in, voices rising in unison like a well-rehearsed chorus. Aunt Lydia, this feels extreme. Cousin Mark. You could have handled this privately. Another cousin. Family sacrifices for each other. I didn't reply. I watched the typing bubbles come and go, felt the familiar pull to explain myself, to soften the edges, to make them understand. And then I remembered. They didn't ask me to explain. They asked me to disappear. An hour later, my phone rang. Martin. I'm dropping off a few boxes tonight, he said. Stuff that belongs to you. They didn't open them. When he arrived, he carried 3 neatly taped boxes into my living room and set them down carefully, like they contained something fragile. Inside were things I'd bought years ago. A blender still in its packaging. Kitchen towels folded and untouched. A router I'd paid for and installed myself before they decided they didn't need it anymore. Small things, forgotten things, evidence. You did more than they ever admitted, Martin said quietly. Don't let them twist this. After he left, the tone in the group chat shifted. Anger turned to panic. Please don't do this. Your father isn't sleeping. How am I supposed to pay my phone bill? This isn't fair, I responded once. I'm not discussing money anymore. That was it. The messages slowed, then stopped. At 2:07 a.m., one final message appeared from my mother. If you do this, you're dead to me. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it hurt, because it didn't. I typed back one sentence. I'm sorry you feel that way. Then I placed my phone face down and turned off the light. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No buzzing, no crisis waiting for me to solve it. I made coffee, sat at the table, opened my laptop, and finished what I started. Passwords changed, cards removed, automatic payments canceled. Each confirmation felt like cutting a thread that had been wrapped too tightly around my ribs. When I met with my therapist later that week, I told her I felt both lighter and terrified. She smiled gently. Peace can feel dangerous when you've lived in chaos, she said. That night, Elliot came over with takeout and quiet understanding. He didn't try to fix anything. He just sat with me, grounded and present. I'm proud of you, he said. For the first time, I believed it. The quiet that followed wasn't dramatic. It didn't crash into me or announce itself with relief. It arrived slowly, the way a house sounds after the power goes out, and you realize how much noise you were living inside without knowing it. The first few days after I cut the financial ties felt strange. My phone stayed still. No emergency texts. No sudden, can you just help this once calls. For the first time in years, my mornings didn't begin with a scan for damage control. I noticed small things instead. How the sunlight pooled across my kitchen table without interruption. How I could finish a cup of coffee while it was still hot. How my shoulders sat lower, like they were finally allowed to rest. At work, nothing collapsed. The world didn't punish me for choosing myself. Payroll still balanced. Deadlines still arrived and passed. The discipline I'd used to hold my family together turned out to be transferable. I applied it inward instead of outward. Then the silence cracked. Not with apology, with entitlement. It started with an email forwarded from HR. Subject: Emergency Contact Inquiry. My mother had attempted to access my personnel file. The request was flagged automatically. Relationship unverified. Access denied. I stared at the screen for a long moment. then closed the email without replying. I didn't feel anger, just confirmation. They were still reaching for doors that no longer opened for them. 2 days later, my apartment manager called. "Your parents came by asking for your forwarding address," she said carefully. "We didn't give them anything." "Thank you," I replied. That was it. I didn't explain. I didn't ask what they said. I didn't need to know. A week later, the old phone I kept in a drawer buzzed to life. I powered it on out of curiosity, not hope. 87 missed calls. Dozens of voicemails. My mother's voice shifted from controlled to frantic. My father's messages grew shorter, harsher. Page oscillated between rage and desperation so fast it gave me whiplash. You can't just disappear. This silence is cruel. We didn't mean it like that. You owe us an explanation. I listened to none of them. I turned the phone off and placed it back in the drawer. The most unsettling realization came next. I didn't feel guilty. I felt finished. The months that followed were quiet in a way I had never experienced. No one demanded proof of my worth. No one audited my choices. I restructured my finances completely, not to prepare for crisis, but to plan for a future that didn't involve emergency exits. I started taking evenings seriously, cooking meals instead of eating over spreadsheets, walking after work without headphones, letting my thoughts exist without being drowned out. Elliot noticed the change before I did. "You're lighter," he said one night, handing me a plate. Not happier exactly, just steadier. I nodded. That was the word. Steady. Then came the moment I didn't expect. My Uncle Martin called late one afternoon. "They're in trouble," he said quietly. I didn't ask who. "Real trouble," he continued. "They didn't transfer the accounts in time. Utilities are being shut off. Paige's lease fell through." "They thought you'd cave." I closed my eyes. "Did they ask you to talk to me?" I asked. "Yes." "Did you?" "No." I exhaled slowly, not relief, not satisfaction. Acceptance. A few days later, Martin came by with one last envelope. Not from my parents, from the bank. Inside was confirmation that every account tied to my name had been formally closed or transferred. No more overlap. No more shared responsibility. No more quiet liability. I filed it away in a folder labeled Completed. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd sorted receipts weeks earlier. Only now, the stacks were gone. The floor was clear. The space felt earned. The final confrontation didn't happen the way movies script them. No shouting, no tearful apologies, no dramatic reunion. It happened at a funeral. A distant relative on my mother's side passed quietly. Obligation drew everyone into the same room one last time. I arrived early and took a seat near the aisle. I wore black, simple, and unremarkable. When my parents walked in, my mother froze, mid-step. "Elena," she said. Not a greeting, a test. I met her eyes calmly. "Carolyn." Her lips pressed thin. She wasn't used to hearing her name without reverence. My father stood rigid beside her, hands clasped too tightly. Paige lingered behind them, eyes darting, calculating. During the service, they watched me more than the ceremony. Confusion flickered across my mother's face. Fear, too, the kind that comes when people realize the rules have changed, and no one asks for their consent. Afterward, my mother cornered me near the exit. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "Families move past things." I looked at her, really looked. At the lines around her mouth, the exhaustion she'd worn as entitlement for years. "You didn't ask to move past anything," I said evenly. "You asked me to disappear." "That's not what we meant." "It's what you wrote," she faltered. "We were angry." "So was I replied. "The difference is I didn't punish you with silence. I just stopped holding you up." Paige stepped closer. "You went too far." "No," I said. "I went exactly as far as I needed to." My father cleared his throat. "You can't just erase us." I shook my head. "I didn't erase you. I stepped out of the system that kept me invisible." Silence stretched between us, heavy and unfamiliar. There was nothing left to argue. I walked away. Back in my apartment that night, I stood by the window and watched the city breathe. Cars passed. Lights flickered. Life continued without commentary. For years, I believed love meant endurance, that staying, no matter the cost, was proof of loyalty. I was wrong. Love without respect is not love. Silence is not cruelty when it's chosen for survival. And boundaries are not punishments, they're definitions. The quiet didn't erase my grief. It gave it room to soften, room to settle, room to turn into something manageable. By the end of the year, my life didn't look extraordinary from the outside. Same job, same apartment, same routines. But inside, everything had shifted. I no longer waited to be needed. I existed because I chose to. And for the first time in my life, the silence wasn't empty. It was mine.